Right. All right. We got to go live, brother, because they're all waiting on me now. So just hang tight here.
Yeah, sure.
Shalom, Chavrim. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Today we have a very special guest with us, Phil Kirschner. Phil is a Jewish man, Jewish believer, and he's joining us.
No. 2 steps back.
2 steps back. He is a Jewish guy. Let me put it like that. Not a believer in the God of Israel. That's what I mean when I say Jewish believer. But anyway, let me just say here, Phil is a survivor, a first responder from the 9/11 catastrophe that happened in the United States, and also worked with the Israeli border, the Magav police in Israel before. And we've invited Phil on today to discuss a little bit about the 9/11 event there when it comes to the Saudis that are involved in that, as well as the Iran situation. And because Phil had a very unique experience interviewing in the past one of the defected scientists from Iran that actually worked on the nuclear program and how they already have nuclear weapons there. So, Phil, I want to welcome you to the program, to Israeli News Live. I go back a long way with Phil in the days when Phil and Jason Egroff worked together on another program there, and that's how we met years ago. And he's always been a good friend there, and I really have appreciated Phil over the years there. Phil, take it away, my friend. Tell the people a little bit about yourself and the things that you've gone through with 9/11.
First off, I want to start by thanking you for standing behind Israel through thick and thin, and the American Christian Zionist community that supports us. First of all, gratitude. I've worked in public service my entire life. I was an EMT, U.S. Marine. Still am a Marine. Once you're a Marine, always a Marine. I was a member of a volunteer ambulance corps and fire department as early as I can remember. The EMT numbers in New York State are now in the 900 series, and I go back to the late 70s, early 80s, and my number is in the 13 series, so that's how far back I go. I served as a basic EMT, took a paramedic course at St. Vincent CMC in New York City, where they also had their nursing school. Went to serve with the Israeli border police because Grandpa said I should. It would build character. And, spent a few years in Israel, waking up every morning, driving to the Judean Hills, and then watching the sunsets in the Judean Hills. And it's an experience I long for and yearned for.
That's very interesting, Phil. Also, as a first responder in 9/11, and pardon me just a minute, guys, I'm trying to get the speaker part here a little bit higher so it picks up a little bit better for those having a hard time hearing there. But as a first responder, I know that you believe that the Saudis are definitely more behind this. And of course, yet we went to war with Iraq instead of the Saudis. What's your stance on that, Phil?
Well, I mean, with Saudi Arabia asking for aid with the nuclear umbrella of Israel, with Iran, I think there are a lot of questions that are not answered in terms of September 11th. The cloud of war with Iran is literally clouding Netanyahu and the Israeli government's ability to think logically. On he goes before the UN saying, the enemy of my enemy is not my friend but my enemy, which means basically it's Machiavellian. And at the same time, behind the scenes, enters a deal where we equip them with defensive weaponry to prevent Iranian attack. And then we put Saudi Arabia under the nuclear umbrella of Israel, which basically is the Samson option or the Armageddon option is what I call it. And basically, pushing the status quo without any answers to questions on their terrorist involvement. 15 to 19 hijackers supposedly were from Saudi Arabia. So, how do we trust the Wahhabis? They fuel Hezbollah. Hamas is fueled by, Iran. And Abbas continues to allow terrorism to occur in Israel at the hand of Iran, while at the same time we're working with terrorists who struck at an American ally. So I don't see where this is going, except nowhere, mighty quickly.
Do you think that what we're dealing with right now with Saudi Arabia is that Israel, under Prime Minister Netanyahu, is more interested in his relationship with the Saudis in order to try to take down Iran?
Well, I think Israel is afraid of Iran because they have three fat man-sized low-yield nukes that they can't deliver onto a warhead because they don't have the know-how to miniaturize the technology. And that's the saving grace.
Exactly. They don't have the technology. But the thing is, Phil, is the world does not realize that Iran already possesses nuclear weapons to begin with. And as you said, they are huge.
Not the kind that are deliverable is what I'm telling you.
Right.
Iran has no ability to get it to Israel. They would have to put it in, literally into a B-52 bomber type or a Russian Tupolev aircraft and drop it over Tel Aviv. Israel has a very wide net of radar, satellite surveillance. Any plane that takes off from any airbase in Iran, it will not get within 300 miles of Israeli airspace, let alone Saudi airspace at this point.
With the exception of the drone that they sent over that made it into Israeli airspace. Here, Phil, I think the biggest issue is that the rest of the world doesn't realize that the Iranians even possess any type of atomic bomb to begin with, only that they're trying to achieve this. And you interviewed a scientist that had defected from Iran that actually gave this information on a broadcast that you did a couple of years back. And this is one of the reasons why, besides other intel that you have that you cannot divulge, but that your knowledge of knowing that Iran already possesses the nuclear, an atom bomb, so to speak, but with the lacking the means of deliverability at this point here. And that's what kind of gets me, because the public doesn't realize this. And the whole agenda right now with President Trump and with Prime Minister Netanyahu is telling the world that they're trying to stop them from getting the nuclear weapons. But it's interesting that you bring this up, though, Phil, that they don't have the deliverability, because that's the second issue that they're worried about, is their missile system. Whoop, we lost Phil. Hang on. We lost you there, Phil.
Yeah, it sounds like either some interference from somewhere.
You know why? That's because NSA has picked up on our conversation, and as I was saying right before I lost you, Phil, you interviewed the scientist from Iran that said that he worked on the program, said they had built the bomb, but the thing, as you pointed out, is the deliverability is not there. But ironically,
it takes for a warhead to be fired, like an atomic bomb, it has to be delivered.
Right, exactly. But here's the thing, though, Phil.
Israel knows every plane going off at every airport, military and civilian. They can't be struck. Israel can't be hit. Saudi Arabia can't be hit. Certainly America can't be hit. Exactly. No Iranian plane will ever get anywhere within 200-300 miles a year Israeli airspace, is what I'm telling you.
But here's the thing, though, Phil. Here's what gets me. They're telling the public that the public is being told that they need to stop Iran from making a nuclear weapon. All right. But in reality, it's not that. It's the missile systems that they're more concerned about, is that the Iranians might figure out a way to deliver the nuclear weapons they already have. And yet the world is being dumbed down to think that, well, the Iranians don't even have the nuclear weapons as yet, So we got to stop them from getting that. But at the
They
same,
have several large weapons that, in terms of physical size, but very low yield, and they don't have the ability to miniaturize it and put it on a warhead or deliver it. And the point is, the Israeli intelligence agencies, I'm not going to name, everybody knows their names, the Mossad, but there's sub-directors within that their sole purpose is to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons because of their religious rhetoric.
yes, yes. But here's the thing, though. Let me ask you this. I mean, one thing I do agree upon: Iran is definitely a threat for Israel. There's no doubt about it. And
it has been and will be until that regime is pulled out. President Obama had not one but two opportunities. The previous President Bush had plenty of opportunity. He screwed that up by taking Iraq out of the picture as well, which had no weapons of mass destruction. There was no reason to invade it. Even Colin Powell resigned after his fallacious speech at the UN, saying we got to get rid of Saddam Hussein because of the axis of evil. All that did was establish a power vacuum in the Arab world, which caused the Persians to gain power. And I'm not calling Iranian Arabs. They're not. They're Persian.
Well, you're also dealing with, when we're dealing with Iran, before, the power change that turned what we have in Iran today, of course, happened long before the Iraq War. And
Ron Paul would call that blowback for removal of Mossadegh.
Yes.
Well, I don't agree with Ron Paul's isolationist policies. I do agree with one thing. Secular dictators are are pretty good for the Arab world itself because they can control the population from severe religiosity.
Right. But here's the thing that we're looking at as well. Do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to use this current situation with Iran to kind of cover his own backside with the legal ramifications that he's facing right now?
Well, I mean, Netanyahu is an Israeli. He was born in Israel. His brother was born there. If you notice, his English is succinctly clear, is because most of his life was spent in the United States. He has extreme ties to certain elements of the U.S. deep state, in my opinion. And I question his ability to lead Israel as a leader. Ultimately, I think we need a righteous Jewish leader like Moshe Feiglin.
Well, Moshe Feiglin, I'd like to bring him up just for a minute, Phil, because I know Moshe Feiglin as well. When he was running for prime minister in this last election against Netanyahu, there was some pretty underhanded things that happened with Prime Minister Netanyahu against Moshe Feiglin. And one of those was calling up a judge in the middle of the night and making some changes that affected Moshe Feiglin and pretty much caused him to even lose any possibility of even competing against the prime minister. It kind of made me...
It's abuse of power and abuse of executive privilege, as far as I'm concerned. I hope that was not taken with the security cabinet meeting in mind. I hope it was an individual action, because I think Moshe Feiglin should be the leader right now. I think we would come into a peace plan, actually, if he was.
I think we would as well.
There's a lot of talk about people in Gaza going to become Egyptian, the West Bank, Jordanian. There's a lot of talk on that. And you have Syria, who's in the middle, being used by the power entities of the world, like the United States, Russia, Iran, Tehran, ultimately. And then you got the globalist puppet masters.
I think when it comes to Syria, Phil, too, one thing about Syria that really concerns me is that even though Russia has come there to pretty much help President Assad out against the different terrorists that are fighting against his nation, I still believe that even Putin has his own agenda that doesn't necessarily fully have Assad at heart. And more, I'm seeing the alliance between Vladimir Putin and that of Erdogan, which is very troubling to me because Erdogan is the one that is actually calling on 57 Islamic nations to come against Jerusalem and take Jerusalem, which, as you know, he met with the Pope of
How
Rome.
did that occur when Erdogan can't even get the Sunnis and Shia to agree on one single thing?
Well, yes.
Well, the Arab and Turkish and Muslim world fights each other and kills each other off.
Well, I agree. He's not going to get them together, but the mere fact that the Iranians are even sitting down with the Turks to begin with is a major milestone in itself. I mean, you're talking about Shiite Sunnis actually agreeing over something in Syria. Again, Putin, he's come there to help Assad, but at the end of the day, I'm more and more, I'm beginning to wonder, what is the real purpose? I mean, granted, if it wasn't for Russia, Assad would have already fallen. His nation would have been destroyed completely. So there is something to say to Putin coming in to help them out. But I am concerned about that alliance with Turkey.
Ultimately, the issue is it's not what the Arab world is doing. Ultimately, the issue right now with Turkey is over pipelines and access, and more importantly, what's sitting off of Israel's coast, which is the riches of Israel, which will be a major game changer in the world's eye, financially and economically. It will relegate the Arab world to where it belongs next to the dustbin of history.
Well, there's a new article out right now that just came out today, Phil. I'd like to get your thoughts on this here. And this article here is on Newsweek. Russia has won in Syria. Will it challenge the U.S. in Lebanon next? That's a big question in the minds of some right now, is that Russia may get involved with Syria and, with Lebanon. And I could see possibly this being so because Gazprom in Russia had a major stake in the Leviathan oil field at one point with Israel, but finally backed out because of all the bickering and fighting of the different people trying to get a hold of the rights to drill and etc. And we also know that Putin has signed an agreement with Mahmoud Abbas for the West Bank on the oil rights.
Of course. You got to take a look at the bigger picture, though. Is who has the ability to develop that oil field technically? There are only a few countries with the resource and infrastructure. The United States is one, and its oil companies. Number two would be the Russians. Number three would be the Chinese, the Brits, and the Dutch. Those are the only really 5 nations that can tap that oil field and do it well without destroying the environment.
Exactly. So, what do you think is going to happen in all this, Phil?
Ultimately, I think Israel will, if we get rid of Netanyahu and put in Moshe Feiglin, will work with President Trump at shoring up our safety without spending American lives. I don't want to see a single American die fighting in Israel for Israel when we ourselves can do that.
Well, and I appreciate that too, Phil. But, the one thing that I've always said when it comes even to the situation with Iran or Syria, Israel, we do have some pretty big friends. We do have the United States that has Israel's back if something were to go south. And for that matter, Russia is an ally for Israel as well.
I realize something also. Europe has done itself in. I don't think Europe will get a single contract from that oil field. Ultimately, I don't think you're going to see that. I think what you're going to see, Europe, if Corbyn wins in the British parliamentary elections and he becomes prime minister, you're going to see a massive flight of British Jews to either Israel or the United States. You won't see them remain there. Either they'll be in Israel, and we'll get a whole lot bigger soon. Europe is falling. It hates itself for what it is. They have no identity anymore of what they are.
Yes, we had. I
You know,
want to thank.
you know, and they don't, this goes to, I mean, ultimately to the people who control the flow of currency, guys like George Soros,
Yes,
which is, it's a wonder why. I mean, a few years ago, the Knesset passed a bill to stop all Nazi hunting activities. The man is a collaborator. He sold Jews for the highest price to Hitler. That's like $1,000 a head, from what I understand. Then they took the wealth and divvied it up. That's how he got his millions. Then he parlayed the British sterling and turned it into billions. Basically, it became the owner of the forex currency exchange. At a single keystroke, the man could collapse currencies. He's holding the world hostage.
By the way, Phil, we just got a report coming out, and I think it was Mia on our chat here said that the Jerusalem Post had just loaded up an article here saying that Iran planning to launch a barrage of missiles against Israel. That's from the.
I know that. I saw that report earlier in the day. Chances are they are fielding missiles in Syria.
But here's the thing, though. Listen to this, Phil. They're talking about that they're going to do it from Syria, and to me, this is only a fulfillment of what we see with General Wesley Clark when he said that the agenda was to take down, of course, Iraq. Syria was next. Lebanon, Iran was going to be the last country, but you had these 7 nations that were going to be taken down. And they're determined. They're going to take Syria out one way or the other. And this is what really concerns me.
Syria's not the issue. It's my whole premise. Leave the side of power. You don't want to create a power vacuum. Every time you remove a secularist, what do you get? You get Islamist dictator.
Exactly.
An Arabic.
Exactly. And you know, Phil, this is what I've been trying to tell people, is that if you take out Assad, he's the only somewhat liberal Arabic leader in the Middle East that's left, to where the people have freedom, the Christians have freedoms, the Jews have freedoms. They could all worship the way they wanted to. And you take him out, and you're going to get what? Whether it be the Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, or even the Free Syrian Army is beheading the people.
Pick your poison. Pick your poison there. You know, this has been the linchpin of American foreign policy, to create mayhem and destabilize the region. It's not good for Israel. Certainly is not. And Israel doesn't know what it needs half the time, except I think it needs Moshe Beglin.
Yes, we do need a change in the government there. And you know, Phil, the one thing is Menachem Begin to me was one of a non controlled deep state operative in our Israeli government system. Shimon Peres was a Vatican sellout, and it seems like that Netanyahu has kind of walked into the footsteps of Shimon Peres. And
I won't go that far in terms of selling out to the Roman Catholics. I care less about them. I don't think they do have an effect in Israel because of the Catholic opinion on the street. But at the same time, I don't give them any credence. I think the big issue with what really lies is the U.S. foreign policy of mayhem and instability, and it has to be discouraged. I think President Trump is trying as best as he can. He's a businessman, not a politician. He doesn't play the game very well. He has to survive the next year or two and then get past another election in 2020. I think the U.S. military begged him to run, from what I understand, because they know if Hillary was elected, it would be all she wrote for the people here.
Absolutely. Phil, I want to thank you for coming on with us today. We're about out of time here, and my brother, you're a blessing, and I like your candid views, and you're a true Israeli, and you have a family history in Judaism and in Israel that goes way, way back, and I appreciate tremendously.
Thank you for your time, Steve. We'll talk off air. What time are you going off after I get off?
I'll be on for a little bit longer, and I'll try to get back with you. Of course, I'm in Europe right now, so it's getting close to midnight here. And but if not,
I want to have about a half to 20 minutes with you just to shore up what we discussed on air, and you do some follow up work with that.
You got it.
Certainly. My whole premise is we have one of the biggest intelligence agencies in the world in the United States. Obama had not one but two opportunities to make regime change in Iran. He blew it.
Yeah. Well, we need to try to get Gulen Fagan to come on Israeli News Live as well. We have a lot of Israelis that listen in.
We could do that. We could try.
Let's try to get him on, because it would give him some good exposure as well, and also get his take on the things that are going on here. So if you could reach out to him for me, maybe we could get him to come in.
I don't know if you have his email address. It's not connected anymore. I don't know what I did with it, but I'm going to try to reach out to him.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Phil, blessings to you, my friend.
You too. Bye.
Shalom. Phil Kirschner. I tell you what, he's loaded when you get him going. You never know which direction you're going to go. But Phil, he's Jewish. His whole family, a lot of ties in Israel as well. Not afraid to really speak his heart, his mind on what he thinks is going on. I know that we may differ a little bit on some issues there, but the one thing that I liked is I wanted to bring a balance in there, because quite frankly, I did not know where Phil stood on everything. I did know that he interviewed the Iranian scientist that had defected and that they had developed the atomic bombs. But as Phil pointed out over and over in here, that they don't, or at least back then when he interviewed him, they don't have the means to deliver what they've developed because it's too large. But that being said, they are looking for those ways, and we'll just have to see how that works out. To see which direction this is going to go in. Giuliani, Trump is committed to regime change in Iran. We're seeing this more and more. We see Mike Pompeo also calling for regime change. When I'm seeing these types of things coming out here, to me, this is the deep state wanting to make sure that they remove the Iranian government. Now, I have to be just really frank about it. I don't understand what Iran had to do with the picture here. I've heard, the statements of the Greater Israeli Project, which to me is not true. Israelis, this Greater Israeli Project shouldn't even be titled the Greater Israeli Project. It should be titled the Deep State Project or something like that is what they should have called it. But there are a lot of factions in the background, and we did a really in-depth broadcast on Patreon and Israeli News Live on Patreon about these issues here. And I knew that, I will say this, I knew that Phil was not 100% for Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's not against him, but he's not for him. He really wanted to see Gulen Fagan come into power. But as he's said to me before, Netanyahu has, and he even mentioned here tonight, ties to the deep state in America because he spent so much time in the United States as well. And I brought out clearly too to you guys already, the man is supporting the gay parades in Jerusalem. He is supportive of, he signed off on the most liberal abortion bill that Israel has ever seen in its history. He cannot be a man that is led of God. He just can't be. And, so I really question a lot of these things. And it's really causing me to think too, because, I'll tell you this. There's some things that I say on Patreon that I just can't say here because I get into names. I get into speaking about the individuals and the things that they've done that have brought this man to power. And it seems very evident to me that him being placed into power was done intentionally. And that's something that a lot of people are not aware of. There was an intent to put him into power. And and I think it was staged from the very beginning. I think Menachem Begin was probably one of the true leaders of Israel that was elected by the people that slipped past the Vatican's clutches. And but all the rest, I believe, have been controlled by Rome in one way or the other. It's very obvious. I mean, when you go to the Pope of Rome, you do not get the audience with the Pope of the Rome without kissing this man's ring. There is an allegiance that must be an approach that is required of him in order for you to go there. And to me, that's like a form of worship. And there's just no way would I ever have an audience with someone in that type of manner. But let me get off this page here, just trying to make sure we don't get any interruptions in the middle of this here. But there is a move. And now with, was it Mia that actually was in the comments there that I just happened to look over because I don't see comments very often, but I saw a name, I think it was Mia or Maya, that actually had mentioned about the Jerusalem Post there. And so that's why I quickly pulled that up while we had Phil on here to share that with you guys, that now they have this article coming out here saying that the Iranians are going to be using Syria. Ronnie Daniel is bringing out, the military analyst, that they're going to use Syria to launch multiple rocket attacks into Israel. Well, if they're bringing this out already, believe me, they're going to justify targeting the Iranians in Syria. And to me, it's only to drag them into a confrontation. Trump is ready. Mike Pompeo, they're ready. They just need an excuse. And the best way to get that, and I don't know. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Hair Trigger. If it was, I don't know if you pronounced it M-I-A, if that's Maya, whatever. God bless you. Thank you. I really appreciate you posting that in there. I'm glad I can see it. So, because I don't see very well to begin with, even with glasses on. I wear 400s and they're still not strong enough. But anyway, I think it's going to be an excuse to launch an attack again inside of Syria. And at the time, while they're targeting the Iranians as well, especially if the U.S. is involved in this attack at all, there will also come the option to be able to try to weaken Assad's military at the same time. I've really been watching that closely and seeing that. Mia Bella, there you go. God bless you, sister, too. I'm watching this very close, what's happening there, because we noticed that the Syrian military had made some big advances right there near the Golan in Quneitra. And the Quneitra literally is right there on the border with Israel. And with the new powers that have been granted to Prime Minister Netanyahu and, of course, Foreign Minister Lieberman, I'm very concerned that they were going to strike the Syrian military to try to slow their advances down. But, even Phil brought this up. I had no idea Phil felt this way. He says, but, they're always taking out the secular governments in the Middle East and replacing them with whatever radical government they possibly can. This is absolutely insane. And troubling as well. And by the way, I will say something. Back when Mr. Feiglin was running for Israel's prime minister, and Netanyahu did his little shenanigan to kind of lower his ability to have any possibility of winning. One thing that happened that really that caught my attention was, if you remember, this is the exact same time, too, that Obama sent his special team in supposedly to try to keep Netanyahu from winning the election. I have wondered on many occasions, and I think we've already said it here on Israeli News Live before as well, that what Obama was doing was actually making sure he stayed in power, not that he was sent there to get him out of power. So that's a troubling thing. What appears to be may not be what really is. And of course, the other issue that's on my mind right now is there's this new talk about Russia possibly desiring to get involved in Lebanon next. We'll have to see how that goes, because there's a lot of oil at stake, and there's some little homework I need to do. And by the way, let me just share something with you guys. We talked about this on Patreon, But Dr. Stern, Daisy Stern wrote this article here, and it's a very insightful article, kind of like Barry Chamish and Joel Bannerman. She goes in how certain people in Israel that have betrayed the Israeli people, and the Vatican, of course, and they're working on taking over the state of Israel. Basically, not taking over the state of Israel, but trying to get Jerusalem as their prize. And one of the things that she mentions in this article here is how that the Vatican targeted those Jews that were part of the Holocaust, the survivors of the Holocaust, the survivors that had gone through anti-Semitism, and the different things that were done by the popes to be able to target this group here, to be able to sway their votes, to get certain prime ministers in, such as Yossi Beilin. And I remember how the Yossi Beilin had met with the Pope of Rome, and how that the Vatican had done, I forget what it was now, I brought this out with you guys not too long ago. They had done something special for him in Poland that won his heart over. And at that point there, the Vatican got involved with the election process in Israel, met with the Arab leaders there. She names the very man that was behind all of that. Let me see right here if this is it. Another outrageous example of Kadima deception is in the fact during the official channel working group between the Foreign Office of the State of Israel and the Vatican since 2006, the Israeli representative for the religious ministry is a Muslim, Baha'i Mansour. Of course, the non-Jew will be willing to give away Jewish patrimony to the church. That's not it there. Let me see if I can find it here. Very remarkable is the fact that negotiations since December 20th, 1993, the date of the fundamental agreement between Israel and the Vatican was signed, were stalled significantly despite the signing of the legality personality agreement in 1997. The agreements themselves and definitions, see the links in the end of the article. That's not it either. Let me just see real quick. She actually talks about when they got Yossi Beilin elected, he was the foreign minister for Menachem Begin. And I actually wrote her. I shared with her, there's something you're missing. And I wanted to share with her one of the key components that she was missing when it comes to Menachem Begin. And I shared that with her. Let's see, here it is here, right here. At the same time, in the summer of 1991, even before the Labor Party was in power, and before Madrid conference, the church already approached Yossi Beilin via Mushamad Israeli friar David Yeager to start negotiations about Jerusalem. According to Yossi Beilin himself, the only thing that really interested the church was properties, lands, things, while Israel wanted recognition, and while the diaspora Jews wanted freedom from persecution. Honestly, the church behaved like a woman marrying for money. Dr. Stern writes here. At any rate, by the time the election time came in Israel, the Vatican already had a working relationship with Yossi Beilin. Now do you understand the deception involved? Most deceptively, the ILC conference took place in Baltimore in 1992, in which the head of the Jewish delegation happened to be Edgar Bronfman, that's the guy, CFR member, who simultaneously happened to interfere in the Israeli elections by arranging meetings between Yossi Beilin and Arafat's men to promise the PLO some sort of state in Palestine in exchange for the Arab vote for the Labor Party in Israel. In effect, Bronfman, as an agent of the Vatican and acting as a go-between, actively interfered in the Israeli election process and helped elect Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres. And the whole purpose of this choice was so that the transfer of Jerusalem and other properties to the church could proceed. Now you'll know why. The video on Patreon is called The Traitors of Israel. And by the way, they worked, as it was mentioned up here, the diaspora Jews wanted freedom from persecution. The Vatican knew this. They played on their emotions as well. And there's others from the evangelical community that have done the exact same thing, play on the emotion of the diaspora Jews in order to get them on the side of Rome. It's very troubling what's been happening in this country. And let me tell you something. As a believing Israeli, and I say I'm an Israeli, not because I have a citizenship in Israel. I was born into the family of Israel. My heart's desire is for my people. My heart's desire is also for the Gentiles as well, and to know the Mashiach, to know the Messiah. But I want my people to know the Messiah as well, and not this diluted garbage. They have been hijacked. Our country has been hijacked by Vatican operatives. Now, I know Phil didn't like really to go into that area there very much. He doesn't care for the Catholic Church. I don't want to say he does, but he's a little bit more reluctant to go into this issue. But for me, it's a major issue. And there are rabbis that have listened to the things I've taught for a long time that are doing it. Rabbi Winston, Rabbi Tovia Singer, both. You know, they just don't go into the Yeshua part. They don't get into the Jesus part of it. You know, but that's okay. But at least they're trying to they're warning Israelis of the dangers of the Vatican. You know, I'm going to have to send these two rabbis once again some new teachings I'm going to do on this. I'm going to go much deeper into this. And we're going to continue to make that voice on Patreon. I may try to bring up some other, I know people have shared with me some other platforms as well, but the problem I'm running into is I'm only one guy and I can only say so much in so many different places. And I need to get back and finish this book that I'm writing as well to help open the eyes of not only the Christian or the Jews, but to open the eyes of my Christian brothers and sisters, because you have to understand in 2013, when the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, met with the Pope of Rome, Pope Francis, he effectively gave Mount Zion over to the Pope of Rome. There were things said in that meeting that we never saw publicly, but he gave him Mount Zion. When Tony Palmer went to Kenneth Copeland's conference there, he sold the evangelical community right over to the Pope of Rome. I'm not going to say a whole lot about that here, but you guys can only read between the lines. You ever seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Well, at that point there, then the Pope of Rome, right after John Kerry's 9-month negotiation was completed, that 9-month negotiations had nothing to do with the Palestinians. It was all about the Pope of Rome being able to get Mount Zion and doing a communion service in the upper room. And I think this is also the reason why Tony Palmer ended up dead, by the way, if he really did die. But I think he died for one reason. The Vatican is wanting to make prophecy fit what they believe the narrative should be. And John was only to continue for a short space. And by the way, Tony Palmer said he came in the spirit of Elijah to turn the hearts of the children back to the fathers. Psalm 83 says they consulted against thy hidden ones. That's what he's talking about. The hidden ones are the two witnesses. And Esau, Rome, has had meetings about how to deal with the two witness scenario. How are we going to mock the two witnesses when we know the two witnesses are really coming? There's a lot of things I'm willing to say here too. Don't think I'm not. I am. But I do know that we're watched heavily. And at least even let me just say one, let me ask you guys one thing. If something happens to us on Israeli News Live, you know where we are. We have IsraeliNewsLive.org. We have Danoon Institute. We have about 14,000 subscribers there. But if you want to know what's really going on, we're on Patreon as well. I think I still have my Vimeo account. I don't load anything on Vimeo, but that's Stephen Benoon under my real name, Benoon. And we are going to put together the INL magazine. We will be putting that together. It won't happen until I get back to the United States. We do have some contributors that'll be contributing to that. Now, granted, that would be a situation where breaking news you wouldn't hear, but that's really mainly set up for more in-depth views and looking at in-depth things there. But I'm just trying to cover the bases. My dad used to always say, never have all your eggs in one basket. Because if you drop that basket, you lose everything. And Ben Noon is actually spelled B-E-N. I'll spell it right here in the chat for you guys that are watching chat. That is, did it come up? Or did I not type anything? I don't think I typed anything. I apologize. Let's try it again. Ben Noon. Some people are confused, and let me just clarify what it is. Dinoon, what we're called Dinoon Institute, okay? Dinoon is the pen name that I write with. So my books are written in my pen name, Stephen Dinoon. My real name is Stephen Ben-Noon, like Joshua in the Bible, son of Noon. So that's what it is. And it's without the PH. So hair triggers. PH might be better though. Who knows? Anyway, love you guys. Thank you for watching. Support the channel if you really appreciate the work we do here. Help us keep this broadcast going. I mean, I'll do it regardless, but I don't want to have to go back to working regular business again. If it's a blessing to you, stand with us. You can go to IsraeliNewsLive.org. You can contribute there. Or if you're having trouble, because I do get from time to time, people email me and say that it does not work there. We have a physical address there in Orlando. I don't know what it is right off the top of my head. But we also have patreon.com/Israeli News Live. That's actually another way, because I don't know how it really works as of yet. But and I like that way too, because those that always feel a little awkward about donating, because I know how it is. Somebody will go to donate and they're like, oh, I don't want to just donate $5. That kind of makes me feel awkward. Well, you could be on Patreon and donate 50 cents a month, and hey, it's only $6 a year if you did it that way, or if it's $1 a month and you did $12 a year, and it doesn't break the bank to do it. You know what I'm saying? So don't feel ashamed about that. The little widow woman put in 3 pence, like saying 3 pennies. She gave all she had, though. I'm not the type of guy that's going to tell you, sow a seed and $1,000 and God will bless you with a new boat. Oh, please. There's enough of those prosperity preachers out there that it's just ridiculous. God knows what needs we have, and He always, as I've always said to my wife, because my wife gets concerned sometimes, but the thing is we've never had a month that went by that God didn't meet the needs that we have, and we thank you for that, because it's your love that makes that happen. So I do want to thank you personally for all your love that you guys show to us to make this possible as well. Anyway, shalom, shalom, good night. Pray for me. Pray for my wife. I don't like not being with her. She is my heart, and this is the first time we've been apart like this. So I know every time I FaceTime her, I get to see her smiling face, and I'm glad to see her smiling face. She was in her therapy today. And I know that makes her feel a little sickly when she comes out, but it's what has given her the therapy, and by the mercy of God has ensured that I will have her with me for many more years to come. So I thank you guys for praying for her, and soon she'll be back, not too much longer, I think about 10 days or so, and then she'll be back home. And then we'll be back in the U.S. In sometime in July, and we're going to start doing a tour across the United States. We're going to kind of do it kind of odd, because I can't be gone too long from home. So what we'll do is we'll go to the East Coast. I know we're going to go to Brother Benjamin Faircloth's church and hold a meeting there, up there in, Northeast Georgia. But we'll be looking for places to where it's not too far for people to travel to hold meetings at. We'll try to give you guys a couple of months notice, and trying to find venues where we can do that. We'll actually go all the way to the West Coast as well. and even down through Texas, places like that. But we're going to kind of spread it out. We'll go like on the East Coast. We'll go up. When we go up to Georgia, there we'll probably hit Georgia, and then maybe going to North Carolina, and maybe even up to DC, something like that. Hold meetings up like that. And again, tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m. Good evening.